So I'm gonna go ahead and record. Let's pull up 5 here. Remember, you guys can just grab the first one available. I'm going to grab further over because I know everybody's going to be rushing to it right now. So. Surprised it's taking that long. Check my back end. Well, it's on 27. Okay. So let's pop our content out to the side. Throw this guy over here. And let's do our client here. Okay. Oh, I see what you were saying. They give you all the steps now in this new lab, don't they? Huh. Changed it all. All right. Yeah, all this stuff up here. Yep. Yeah, they give you the high level and then give you the deep level. That's interesting. We always talked about doing that, but we never actually did it. Cool. All right. So with our client, let's go ahead and pop into our lab user. Sure, you throw in the S. That will drive you nuts if you're trying to figure out why you can't get logged in, as it does not redirect. And you guys should be aware by now, it may not log in on first check. You may have to wait a little bit. You can always double check that with this one. Check your firewall and see when it's done booting up, and when it's done booting up, then you can hit into it like that. Give it another 30 seconds. Ping's responding. Here we go. Well, this is a fun recording. Should be getting through here. Go gadget firewall.
You just
Yours
gotta
booting up.
let it for a while. It takes a bit to log in.
Pressed. It never used to take that long. Must be the version 11. I noticed with every new major revision, it gets slower and slower. Wait an additional 1 to 3 minutes. All right, fall directions. All right, so we'll hit our device, setup, load. Oops, not that one. Okay, now we can actually get to it. So as we talked about earlier with our security policies, we typically want to have our zone set up so that we can attach things to zones. So if we go out here to our policies and security, and by default, you get these two. So this will be in a question you guys probably saw in the quiz or exam. You'll have your intra zone and your inner zone. Remember, intra is always allowed by default, and inter zone or between zones is going to be denied. So we'll hit our add. There we go. Give it our users to extranet. The rule type, if you guys will remember, this is where you can select whether it's one way or both ways. So you can decide whether it's going to be an intrazone or an inner zone between them, or universal being the main one. Set up your description so you remember what it actually is, as you will forget in real life. Okay. Once we got that up and going, we can go ahead and hit our source. Remember, the other ones that we talked about were tags. So you may want to set up tags that allows you to see clearly in all of your policies as to which policy it may be. And you can group them all by the tags, as well as set up your audit comments as well. So in this one, we'll go ahead and add, and we'll grab our users net. Under our destination, notice the red line means that we have to actually fill it out. Extranet on our application. We'll make sure that's set to any. In this case, we're going to allow anything. Service URL category is also set to any. Remember that applications are very application specific. We're not looking at ports. We're actually looking at the type of traffic going across that port. Where our service URL category is looking specifically at ports and services we identify on said ports. So here we have our application default. Application default is going to make sure that you have things like TCP 80 as well as TCP 443. Those two are allowed by application default. And then any over here. And I've messed those two up several times. I have our default policy as allow. And so we can go ahead and hit OK. And we should see that pop up. Notice that they're always going to go to the top. And the reason for that is you want these policies to be the last resort that they get hit in the rule set. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and commit. And if we wanted to kind of see what this was doing before we actually got that far, if we were to try to go out to the internet, you'll notice that we can't, right? So there's no traffic that's allowing us to go from the user net, which is where this client machine is, out through the firewall and out to the internet. So we'll go ahead and hit commit and commit that traffic, or commit that policy rather. And if all goes well, we should start seeing pings pop up here. All right, so our policy's committed there. Going from the users network out to the extranet. Pings aren't, but let's see if we get out any further there. Interesting. We should be getting traffic going between those. Yeah, I guess we'll see if we got more to go. So the one thing they want you to do is kind of take a look at your user policies. Up here at the top, you're going to see the different columns, and you can modify all these different columns that's going between. So if you click this down arrow, you can see your columns, and then you can adjust which ones we want to turn on and off. We want to eliminate the things like type and things like that that may be taking up more on the screen. So if we take off type, we take off our source device, our destination device, and our options. There we go. And then we can also come in and click on our tags and go to adjust columns. Oops. And that will adjust them so that they're centered and resized on the screen. All right. So, of course, that's actually what they're going to have you do now is actually go ahead and ping. So let's go ahead and test if it actually works. And we know it doesn't. And now I remember why. We'll talk about that later. Ping 192.168.50.80. And you can see we can get to that traffic. So if we're looking as to what that's going to, no, if we look at our topology, this is why it didn't go out, right? We sent everything to the extranet, which is always interesting because they call it the extranet, but then they go and call it a different name inside of the actual policy. That was one bug I was trying to get them to fix. Trying to work on that. But we do get traffic going out. So the IP address that we are pinging is actually the DMZ zone out here. And we're being able to hit not necessarily this DMZ server, but the traffic that's rolling on this side of it. All right. So let's go ahead and pull that back. What did they call it here? So extranet zone, yeah, that's actually the DMZ zone that we called it on here. Okay, so we commit that. Let's get to our policies here. There we go. And if you wanted to actually see if we could get to your extranet, we can come out here and click on this extranet. And we can see that we're able to get out to this website. All right. We can go ahead and close this guy. And we can leave that terminal open for the next part. If we go out and look at our actual firewall, which I closed the wrong one there, pull this back up. Actually, still give you bad instructions there. Okay. If we click on our policies and over to security, we can see that we had some hits go out there. And so each one of these hits is based on this ping address going out, as well as us going out to that actual website. So if we were to refresh this, we can see that count keeps going up and up. If we go over to our ping and we go ahead and stop this part here, go. And then again, you can see that count will have settled down a little bit. We're now at 553. If you click on this actual line to highlight what's going on there, we can actually reset this counter. So if we click the down, we can go to reset. You can also go down here to reset and reset all counters or selected rules. Either one works. So we can do that part. And then we can go ahead and look at our traffic. If we go out to our monitor and our traffic log, here they want you to clean up some of your columns so it's not so busy on the screen. So let's go down here. Come on. There we go, columns. And our type will take off our source dynamic address group. destination address group, and dynamic user group. There we go. There we go. And that makes it a little easier and cleaner to read. Remember, you can always click the drop down and also do adjust, and that will resize them as needed. Now, if we go out to our ping, and as we saw before, when I was trying to go out to Google, obviously I'm ahead in the labs. I got to pay attention to the labs, right? Interesting. Has anybody had any issues with these windows freezing up on them? You guys online?
Not so much, no.
Okay. I know somebody reported that to me here a while back, and it looks like mine is doing the same thing. Let me go back into this one. Huh. What's causing that? Well, I can no longer say that the student was having issues, as I myself am having issues with that, doing that. So, let's see here. Essentially not taking any more keyboard input. Curious now. So Chrome is almost always the better choice for doing these labs. You know what? I can't go in that direction. Let's try this again. That's crazy. It does not want to do it. Just made the lab take a little bit longer. That's right. Didn't change anything on the firewall, so we should be able to boot right back up here. All right, so back on our client, we were going to ping 8s. And notice the traffic's not going through. Get up our firewall here. And if we look at our filters, okay, well, I should ask before we get this far in it, can anybody understand why those are not going out? So on this filter, we want to look for something that is an address with a destination equal to 8.8.8. And coming from the zone source EQ of the user's net. Tell if I actually have that right. Let's address tests 2 C's. So as this thing kind of points out, one, we don't have a security policy in place that allows traffic from the user's net out to the internet, just to the extranet, right? As the firewall looks at the ping session, it's going to see that it gets from one session to the next, and therefore it's actually going to log against the policy for intrazone, right? Or interzone rather. And because intrazone by default denies everything, but it also does not log. That's the reason we're not seeing it in the logs. So you would have to enable that manually in order to see that it was doing its log. So if you click on this actual 3, come down here to the bottom and do its override. And on this override under actions, you can see log at session end, and this will tell us what's going on with your pings. So we can go ahead and hit OK. And we'll commit that change. I gotta resize this. It's driving me nuts. There we go. And with our ping still going, as long as you think it takes to do on this commits, it is like 10 times longer on real hardware. Takes forever to do a commit. All right, so that's there. And if we go back to our monitor tab, traffic, we have our filter in place. You can now start seeing where these are hitting policy deny based off the interzone default rule. And we can see that we're trying to get our traffic out that we were doing before. So to allow our internet out to, or allow traffic out to the internet, we have to set up 2 different policies, one from user's net to the internet and one from the extranet out to the internet. So if we go out to our policies, and add. Go. Okay. Source, again, coming from our user's net. Going to our destination of internet. And in this case, on application, we're going to allow any service category. We're going to go ahead and leave default as well. And then we can go ahead and do our actions and allow. And we will log at session in. So go ahead and hit OK. And we will need to create a second one, which is this one down here, right? And this is our users to the extranet. It wants us to make sure that that one's actually higher up in the chain. So we're going to move our extranet, which is there, internet there. Go ahead and add the next one for our extranet going to the internet. Tag in here. Okay. Source again coming from our extranet to our internet. Same stats all the way through. Go ahead and hit OK. Okay, we can see that gets popped down here. Go ahead and hit commit. Now, if all goes well, this should start pinging through. All right, we're successfully committed. Pings should be going through at this point. Outside, let's see if they actually hit the right one. So if we go out to our traffic, to our search, we can see that we are hitting allow on these, but our reason is being timed out at this point, right? If we look over here in their example, you're seeing ping, allow, and age timeout on these as well, but we should be getting traffic back from here. Let's try this again. Nice. Okay, so our application default, again, the ping's going to still fail because the internet host is not going to reply through the firewall that's actually allowing that traffic. So to do that, we would have to create a NAT policy in order for it to go on through. That's what I was thinking of earlier, is we haven't done NAT, which is what you would do next week when we talk about NAT itself. So we can get out to quad 8s, but a quad 8s doesn't know how to get back to us at this point. We don't have a NAT policy. But our security policies are at least working on this side, where we can see traffic being allowed to go through there. Obviously, when you're debugging, you would want to come back into your policies and make sure you turn off the logging for your interzone. Otherwise, your logs are going to fill up really, really fast. So let's just set up that override real quick. 5 and revert back. There we go. If we looked at our users to extranet, right? And so we look at our source, we say anything from the user's net, but we could also drill that down to our local IP address if we wanted to. So if we put in 192.168.1.20, and on our destination, we could even drill it down to one destination address. This may be if you want to only allow certain services. So right now we're doing wide open from the users over to the extranet. That's probably not what you would do in the real world, right? You would only want to allow certain services or allow certain things to go across. So for example, instead of application default, we could set this to any, and we would leave that there at the time being. And on application, maybe we want to add something specific like ping, for example, right? And so here you're going to see ping show up so that we can only allow ping traffic to go through as an application, as opposed to anything going through there. So on this service, we have the ability to do any here. That's fine. We actually want to set that to select, and we're not going to select any services. In this case, we can just use application default. That's fine. Actions we can allow. We can also set our session to do at the start. We talked about a couple of these other ones where we could set up a schedule and we could allow this to go at a certain time. This is useful for like backup policies, or maybe you want to allow users to gain the access to the internet after work hours, things like that. This profile type is something we're going to talk about here a little later in the profiles, where we turn on all these additional profiles, things like antivirus, vulnerability, anti-spyware, things like that. These are all things that we're going to set up over the rest of the semester. Okay, so if I set this one up, hit OK, I'm going to commit this. Let that do its thing in the background. Another thing is if you come out here to this user's extranet, remember one thing they pointed out in the PowerPoint section. As soon as it loads here, there we go. You now have a usage tab at the top, and we can see when this rule was created, last edited. Go ahead and adjust this so you can actually read it. So we can see what the count is when it first got hit, last got hit. But what's really slick is we can now go to this compare applications scene. And if we go to that, we can see our traffic that we went through there. So earlier when I said allow ping, you could go into this utility and say, okay, we started seeing ping utilities, web browsing, the DNS requests, that kind of stuff. Now we're only going to allow those 3 services, not everything through this firewall. So this is pretty slick to be able to come back in here, see what's going through, and then we can go ahead and add that back in there. Again, making it much more tailored than just wide open. Last thing you want to do is just say wide open on that kind of stuff. All right. And that is the gist of this lab.